Hello.
Hi. Yes, it's annoying.
So
Yes,
elbows.
elbows.
How are you guys?
Very good, thanks. How are you?
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
You'll remember her name, and if it just rings a bell but you can't place it, you'll remember her story.
Very good, thanks.
On an ordinary day in 2003, an elderly driver crashed into a Sydney childcare centre, pinning 2 toddlers underneath the burning car. It was right before Christmas and all the kids were having nap time, excitedly waiting for Santa to visit. 2-year-old Sophie Delezio and her little friend Molly Wood were horribly injured, and for a time it wasn't known if Sophie would survive. She had burns to 85% of her tiny body. She lost both her legs below the knee, her right hand and her right ear. She survived though. She left hospital. Her family, and it seemed all of Australia, celebrated a miracle. And then unbelievably, less than 3 years later, Sophie was hit by another car, whose driver had a seizure, just as her nanny carefully pushed her wheelchair across a pedestrian crossing. This time, the car threw Sophie more than 18 metres from her wheelchair. She had a broken jaw, broken ribs, fractured collarbone, and a punctured lung, as well as bleeding on her brain and a heart attack. Again, she nearly died. And again, Australia prayed for Sophie. But after all of that, Sophie lived. And how she lived. Today, she's one of the most remarkable 19-year-olds you could ever hope to meet.
For me, my prosthetics are my main type of freedom. I'm happy to use my wheelchair outside the house, but I need my prosthetics to drive my car. I need my prosthetics to, if I'm at a place with stairs, to walk up the stairs. So I think the hardest days are the ones where I just have to do nothing.
From Mamma Mia, I'm Mia Friedman, and you're listening to No Filter, a weekly interview podcast with people like Sophie, who tell their stories very candidly and aren't afraid to be all kinds of vulnerable. Today, I am speaking to that little girl, Sophie Delezio, and her mum, Caroline. Caroline, it's just such a funny interview because I'm saying, what's the best way to talk to you about it? Yeah. Because I guess in another situation, I would say, so tell me about the day. But I just feel instinctively that I don't want to make you relive it in that way. So I want to ask you about the first couple of years of your life, of which you'll have no memory of, I assume. Yes. What was family life like?
Well, it was pretty chaotic because we were told when the accident first happened that we'd be living in hospital with Sophie for a year, and we made it out after 6.5 months. And that, to me, was a testament to her true grit, and equally the team of medical practitioners and support people we had around us at the time that allowed us to get out the doors of the hospital. You don't want to spend any more time in hospital than you can because there's sick people, there's infection, there's greater risk in hospital than being out of hospital. So the time was to come, and we moved home and had round-the-clock nursing care for the remainder of the year. So 24-hour care, nursing care to support us, support Sophie.
It's so funny. I asked you about the first 2 years and you went straight to after the accident.
Yeah.
I actually meant before the accident.
Oh, the first 2 years of her life.
What life was like. Yeah, not the first 2 years after the accident. Because I keep thinking, I'm sure you've read Lee Sales's incredible book, Any Ordinary Day, about how when big traumatic things happen, life is pretty ordinary until that moment when it happens suddenly.
No, it is really ordinary.
So what was your ordinary life like?
Well, Ron and I were both running our own businesses. It was that juggle of parents managing work and little kids, babies, and
2 and 4. Was Mitch 4 and you were 2?
Yeah.
2 and 4. And finding the right daycares, and we'd moved from Erskineville where we'd lived, and we had built a house in Seaforth, and it was kind of like, we haven't been on a list for long enough for daycare. You go into the kind of this, oh no, I've failed as a parent because I haven't kind of got there yet.
Remember when that was your biggest problem?
The daycare, and then comes the school, that sort of focus.
So if I don't remember being 2 or 3, I think my first memory kicks in around 4, but that's because my childhood was fairly unremarkable. What's your first memory?
I honestly have no idea. My brain's like, some things, I don't know if they're memories or like things I've just made up in my mind or have been told.
Stories that you've heard 100 times about that day, for example.
Yeah, exactly. So I think my first memory is at a Christmas tree. I can't remember if I was injured, like disabled or not. I have no recollection of that. I just remember Dad lifting me up and putting the star on top of the Christmas tree. So I think that's my first memory. But again, Christmas comes about every year. It could be any of those years.
And you could have seen it in a photo.
Exactly, because I know there's photos around that tree.
Do you remember hospital the first time?
Nope.
Do you remember hospital the second time?
Nope. I have no recollection of hospitals at that time, but I have, like, I get these feelings whenever I go into, because I went to Children's Hospital at Westmead, and there's this one room where I remember the feeling of being in when I had one of my accidents or a major surgery, and I just remember utter pain. I can't remember the moment or anything, but I can't go into that room still to this day.
It's a specific room in that hospital.
It's one room with a silver bathtub in the middle where I'd get cleaned and they'd strip all my bandages down. Yeah, that was not my favourite room in the hospital.
Yeah.
But that's the only, like, feeling I have from the early days of hospital.
Because I imagine it would all have just blurred, like the operations.
And the high amount of medication I was on kind of dulled it in my brain, and the protective mechanisms, like, blocking it out of my mind sort of thing. So
I bet you have got very strong memories in different ways.
And it's interesting because I'll talk to friends and they go, well, remember that? And you go, oh, yes, I do now, now that you've reminded me. And it's not from necessarily blocking things out, but you move on to some of the specifics of the events. And it was 4.5 months before we were told whether she would live or not. So you kind of live every day knowing that that could be her last. And so your focus is just on that day. Some of the small, things that happen sort of slip away in the memory bank.
I've heard Sophie talk about the fact that you were asked whether you wanted to turn her life support off. Was that one conversation, or was that sort of a series of conversations over that time when she was critically ill?
It was when she was in intensive care. She was in intensive care for about 2.5 months. So we were given the option twice, actually, in the first week.
How does that work? Does someone just sort of sidle up to you and say, this is a hard conversation?
Just the nature of the catastrophic injuries. In fact, I recounted this after the Ando show to Dr. Peter, Sophie's surgeon, who remains her surgeon to this day.
From day one.
Really?
And I said, Peter, I recall the words, and he would say to me, Carolyn, because we'd go, how do we answer that? And he'd look at me in the eye and he'd say, Carolyn, how much can a koala bear? I mean, it's just such a nice way.
That's a beautiful way to say the most awful thing, isn't it?
And he has the most amazing knack of saying, in that sort of extreme environment, something where you can actually connect to what he's saying.
Yeah.
Because of the intensity of what's happening. And the
shock, I imagine.
The shock, and I often can't, explain to people it was like being dropped into a war zone and all this going on around you in a foreign country because you don't know the language. And it's the medical speak too, which sort of compounds this. I just don't get what's going on. And over time you acclimatise.
And you become fluent.
In
this language you never wanted to learn.
Totally.
But he's always been good with that. Like, the amount of procedures I have, I just know basic words of what they are. I have no idea what the technicality of the stuff behind it is. I just know, like, I'd go to my doctor, I'm like, I'm having this done. He's like, yeah, sure. And it's so simple to me. Like, it's just, like, we make up medication I had when I was young, like, we called wobbly medicine. We have no idea what the actual medical name is.
Doesn't like it though. I know that much.
Don't like the wobbly medicine. He sounds like he had an amazing bedside manner.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. He's great.
Did he specialise in kids? Burns in kids? Is that his specialty?
Yes, he's a plastic surgeon. He's the head of plastics at Westmead. But he'd done a lot of work in America at Shriners, and so he's an expert in burns as well. And because of the requirement of all the specialists, literally at Christmas was pulling everyone back from Christmas holidays. And so we lucked out with Dr. Peter. And, the burns unit, generally all the staff in the burns unit, because we had dealings with everyone, was fantastic. But we just have had Peter stay with us all this time. So,
and thankfully he works at adult hospitals as well. So
I was going to say, transitioning now, are you 19?
Yeah. Yes, I am.
So when you're 18, from what I hear, it can be quite a jarring experience to be put into the adult system.
One of the best things was that my hospital from children's to adults was literally just down the road from each other. So it wasn't like a whole new atmosphere and all of that. And I had the same doctor. My doctor has an anaesthetist that works with him at multiple hospitals, and we've met before. And basically my doctor and anaesthetist are the most like important people to know my needs because I have terrible veins and certain medications don't work on me and all of that.
You want that continuity.
Exactly. So having Dr. Peter know everyone was the simplest thing. It was
He could explain what wobbly medicine was.
Exactly.
You didn't have to.
Yep, exactly. I didn't have to say anything. And the nurses changed no matter how many times you go to the same hospital. So it wasn't really that big of an issue. I enjoyed the bigger rooms and no crying babies down the hall. So
Yeah.
it was really, for me, I was very grateful for it to be such an easy experience.
Transition.
And it's all thanks to my doctor just for making it so simple.
Caroline, what about for you and your husband, the transition out of the children's hospital system and into the adults one?
Yeah, it's difficult transitioning as a parent when you've been there for 16 years, essentially. And, you know, the OTs and, you know, the canteen staff.
Yeah.
And the canteen staff still ask about Mitch.
Yeah.
How's Mitch going, you know? It becomes a family. And although we were told very early on, don't let this become your second home or anything. But in many ways, the connections you make at the time is what makes it manageable and what gets you through. And that familiarity in extreme circumstance and certainly ongoing medical care takes an element of stress out of the mix because you have a reliance on these people whom you've known for years, and so therefore you trust them implicitly with the care of your child. And I was grateful for that. So when transition was taking place and still is, okay, so how are we going to do that now? We know we could go back and call any one of those specialists for advice. That's a good thing. We know other families who've transitioned, so you talk to them about how they've gone about it.
Do you get shut out as an adult?
Yeah, you do actually.
Because you don't legally, you can make whatever decisions you want now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's certainly that too. So when you transition to an adult's hospital, it's kind of like, well, you can come, but, you know,
Yeah.
the conversations are with Sophie and not with you.
And
Whereas-
especially with COVID, because I had a surgery a few months ago, and now them being like only you're not allowed to have a certain amount of visitors. So having mum in with me was a risk they had to consider taking.
Yeah, and we usually had a bit of a rotation in the past, but Dr. Peter was really good about involving Sophie in the discussions around his surgery really from when you were about 12.
Yeah, I would decide him a few months in advance. I'd have my physios recommend certain skin releases and scar releases that I needed, but ultimately my doctor would come up to me and was like, what do you want? So it would all be my decision.
What would your choice be between? Because I would have thought that the surgeries you needed wouldn't be discretionary.
The ones I had to have probably up until I was, I think 14 was my last one, was my bone trimming on the end of my legs. So that one I had
Can you
no
explain
choice.
what that is?
So it's literally when my bones are growing, but my skin is the scarring's too bad for it to stretch at the same pace. So they'd have to trim the bones every year to maintain my skin, basically, not let my bones break through my skin.
But Sophie, does that mean that what are these bones called? Your upper leg bones?
Tibias and
You know, those big
Tibias and
thigh
fibias.
bones.
Yeah.
Are they the same size they were when you had the accident at age 2?
No, they've grown, but it's at a much slower pace to what
Okay, so the
it
skin
would have
has
been.
stretched somewhat.
Yeah, it just stretches a lot slower, and with the skin releases, I have to have
And it
that
hurts.
assist with it. Oh yeah, I remember it used to be excruciating pain, and I had growing pains like everyone does. But Mum would have to sit with me for hours and be massaging my legs, and I'd have to have heat packs, ice packs, everything on them, taking so many painkillers. It was terrible pain, but
Has that stopped now because you've stopped growing?
yes, so I might get the random one once a year or something like that, but it's not as major at all. They used to be every 2 weeks or something. I
You'll
used to
start
get them.
shrinking soon.
I know.
Happens as you get older, doesn't
Yeah.
it?
It does, sadly.
Oh well.
Feeling very
I'll
short
just
at the
get
moment.
my prosthetics heightened. So
Yes, exactly. So you had to get the bone trimmed. Was that a very elaborate process. And did you have
Yeah.
rituals about when you went to hospital?
The biggest ritual was always to go out for dinner before surgery, just because I had to fast, and I don't eat breakfast anyway. Like, I'm not a breakfast person, but when you don't have the choice about eating breakfast,
Suddenly you miss breakfast.
yeah, exactly. So we would always go out for dinner beforehand, and I'd make sure to get really full so I'd be fine for the next 12 hours. And then I'd go to surgery in the morning, and the only other traditions are really, we have a little surgery bag that we pop at the end of my bed, and we still do, with a photo of me and cross and a few other little bits and bobs from my time. And when I was younger, there'd be traditions with my mum or dad, whoever came in with me. Like, dad would say, "You're a big, strong girl," and make me say it. And mum would be, "Go to your happy place." So there'd be little traditions amongst us. But now that I'm older, I go in alone, so it's more lonely. But
What about you, Carolyn?
That was the first time this year because of COVID.
Yeah,
They were restricting
right.
access.
Yes.
But,
What surgeries do you still have to have, so?
skin releases. So they take skin from a place that isn't burnt. So for me, that's my right thigh. And then they remove scars and paste the skin on top of where they remove the scar. Yeah, so that's my thing I'll have to have for the rest of my life, because it's not that my bones are still growing, it's that movement is always different. Like, I might not be on my prosthetics as much, so that might tighten some of my thigh scars, and I might not move my right arm up as much, so that's going to tighten that scar. So it's all about, moderating with my physiotherapist each week, and when I go to the gym and exercise, moderating all the scars that could get worse.
What do you do at the gym?
Go on my phone, listen to
What everyone does at the gym,
Yeah.
pretend to exercise while looking at TikTok.
Exactly. Just, it depends on the day. Usually I stick more with weights and try and build up my muscle, because I've spent quite a few months off gym because of surgery. So it's usually trying to recover from that and build up my muscle, because my muscles get weak very quickly. So yeah, just trying to build up that muscle mass again, and things like bike, and I try not to do treadmills and stuff where I'm standing, because it puts pressure on my wounds. But yeah, just whatever's really available, and it's free, so I just take it.
Carolyn, when you were having those how much can a koala bear conversations, what do you take into account when you answer that question?
quality of life. And that was really tricky, because no one has survived her injuries before. And so no one could guide us about what quality life would mean.
Yeah.
So you go through this process of, well, Dr. Peter again was sort of our guide at that time, where he introduced us to young children who'd lost limbs through meningococcal, actually, and became amputees as a result, and the families of them. And that was sort of a baseline, I guess, talking to other parents and families of children who've been burned, which is difficult because of the significant amount of injury that Sophie sustained.
And also the double whammy of being an amputee and having burns, which seems very unfair.
So, trying to get some guidance around that, information pooling, I suppose.
Was she conscious at the time?
No, she was intubated and in a coma, and because the injuries were so extensive, it was really just, she was on life support, and really she could have gone any minute. We were just grateful for another 30 seconds with her in the early time, at that time. So it was sort of grappling with all of that and going, well, what is quality of life? What does that mean? What could she achieve when no one really knew? So we thought, well, we'll just give it a shot. And we told Sophie that if the fight got too hard, that Mary McKillop was going to look after you up in heaven.
Yes, Mary McKillop comes into play at this point. I remember praying for you. I'm not even religious. I remember everyone praying for you both times. You really seem to harness that universally. Are you and Ron of faith? Obviously, you're of faith.
We are.
Were you particularly religious before?
I wouldn't say overly religious. I have a belief, a spiritual belief.
That there's something out there.
Absolutely. And I harnessed that. And I just happened to feel, for me, it was the Catholic faith that resonated most succinctly for me. And I happened to be working in North Sydney at the time, or Blues Point Road, and I just wanted a quiet place. And I found the Mary McKillop Chapel one year when I'd had a couple of miscarriages, and was wanting to have children and was trying to grapple with that this may never happen for us kind of conversation. And I found the Mary MacKillop Chapel and I walked in there and I thought, this is my place. And then I would just get a little tap on the shoulder and someone would just check on me and go, you could go up and do this or you could do that. It was just such a gentle environment and I just felt so good there. Anyway, I prayed on Mary MacKillop's tomb and various things like that and ended up having Mitchell and then Soph.
And so when she was in hospital after the first accident, it just came back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So if she was going to go to heaven, she was going to go to heaven with holding Mary MacKillop's hand.
Yeah.
And I had a belief also in the power of prayer, the power of community and the power of that higher order, that higher being, and just the immensity of the universe that could help us with this situation that seemed extraordinary, catastrophic by some people's words, but certainly greater than I could manage on my own.
And it did feel like there was a universal, like a lot of people who might not ordinarily otherwise pray were all focused on one thing. And you shouldn't have survived really, should you, in terms of your injuries? And
The odds were against me.
the odds were against you and something bigger than you happened. I want to ask about Mitch too, because when I've looked at some of the old interviews and the footage, there's Mitch in the background of photos. There's Mitch sitting next to you on the couch. And you were, from when you were sort of 5 or 6, you seemed to quite love, like you were good at the spotlight and the cameras and you were a naturally very outgoing, effervescent girl and you still are now a woman. And he's always sort of hanging back. And I often thought about how you and Ron felt about Mitch during that time because he was only 4. How did you bring him up alongside Sophie when there was so much understandable focus on her?
It's a really tricky. The siblings of children with ongoing medical conditions or disability have a rough time and they're an under-recognised group. I joined him up to Siblings Australia straight away. And I would
What's that? What's Siblings Australia?
It's a charity, a foundation that was set up by a woman in South Australia. It was the only one I could find. But I wanted to show him that there was support there for him. I always made sure that he had access to all the supports that he would need from a counselling point of view and that he felt as involved. The staff of the Children's Hospital really looked out for him. As I mentioned, the ladies in the canteen still ask after him when we go in. So he was as loved a member of the community. What we did when we were living in the hospital for him, because of the intensity of the week and I guess the rawness of Ron and my emotions, in order to give him some normality and routine in his life, my parents moved over from New Zealand. We had previously lived in Australia, so it was an easy transition for them. But they came and lived in our home for a year. And my mother became his principal carer.
Yeah.
So she would get him to daycare and, teach him to walk numbers down the road and look at the signpost.
So you
that.
could really relax that
Totally.
side and go, that's sorted. I can really just focus my energy.
And then he
where
would
it
come
needs
in
to be.
for the latter half of the week and the weekend, and it was awful. We would have friends pick him up on a Sunday, take him out and do something special and take him home, and he was always very distressed by that.
Having to leave or having to be there?
Having to leave, yes, and it's tough, but we knew ultimately it would be better for him to be at home in his own bed for some of that time.
And he was always very protective of Mum and Dad and myself. Like, when I first lost my legs, he told Mum and Dad that Sophie's legs will grow back like a lizard's tail, like trying to make a situation very, a lot better.
Yeah, he's always been incredibly protective of so innately, like he just can read it. I have this enduring image, and I've spoken of it before, of walking into the Australia Museum and he's sussed out the room, looked at where the parents and the children are, and he's seen someone and he's seen the children look. And so he's grabbed Sophie's pram and turned her around and taken her to an exhibit over there.
Yeah, right.
So that the
He's always got
situation
one eye out.
averted. And he was 4. No, sorry, he would have been 5.
Yeah.
It would have been quite early. One of the things that we tried to do for Soph is not cotton wool, her wrapper in cotton wool. It's like if she was well enough to go out, she was well enough to go to the museum or to the aquarium or for a walk on the beach, whatever. And as soon as she could have all her bandages off and her pressure garments off, she was not one to cover up. If it was hot, she would strip off and her legs would be out, and loud and proud she was. And that was her. That's innately her. And, you'd be pushing this little T-shirt and little shorts. Quite when she was young, that's very different for children in particular to see someone without legs. Like, where did her legs go? Well, let me tell you a story.
But you all guys were also famous, like super famous. Everybody in Australia recognised your faces. So that's a whole other level of staring and attention. How do you live with that? Because it's a funny kind of celebrity where everyone feels that they know you, right?
Yeah. I think that's best answered by Sophie. But for me it was, well, I can either have people stare at her or they can say hello and send her love. And as a parent, I thought, well, I know which one I'd prefer. So I think we'll just go down this path. And so I've got a lot of love from people. The other side to that was that I know that Sophie, in fact, I was talking to a friend of mine about it yesterday. We were up at the Australia Zoo, and this woman came up to you and she said, oh, I'm so pleased you love this place too. This is my sanctuary. I'm going through cancer treatment. And she said, and it's made doubly special for me today because I've seen you here. And then there was another incident where someone had written and said, I had been thinking of suiciding, and I've read your story. I now realise what I have to live for. It's incredibly powerful stuff. So if by Sophie having a public image, because so many people loved and cared about her, and the story continued, because there was just this continuance, a natural continuance. Everyone thought it would end, but it continued. It was important for me to know that if the story was a public one, as it was anyway, and it helped people to change their life for the better or live a better life, then that was an important legacy.
It's a lot though. Like you're still, like at 19, you kind of, I don't know, you want to maybe drink and date some people and make some mistakes and maybe not drink. But like that's a lot to take on. Everybody's feelings about you and everybody's, you've saved my life or changed my life or I'm so grateful. Like, is that why you wanted to go to the UK?
Everyone thinks that, but honestly, for me, it was just to see if I could manage my care by myself. And I felt like if I stayed in Australia...
Couldn't you have just moved out of home though?
I mean, yes, but everything was set up for me. Like my physio was, I have a pharmacy that's set up for me. I have my doctors, everything is set up. And I wanted to see if I could just go to another country.
And start from scratch.
Yeah, where I knew no one and just try and see if I myself could do it. Yeah. And that's why like my mum and dad and everyone wanted a carer to go on the plane with me. And I was like, no, they can come a week after. Like, I understand, I said yes for my mum's sake and my dad's sake and everyone's sake, but I was like...
Throw mum and dad a bone.
Yeah.
Speaking on behalf of mums and dads, yeah. I'm like, throw us a bone. Exactly. Let us at least come and carry the bags.
See, I think they wanted it to be them, but I was like, no, my friend can come instead.
Someone, at least they can have a proxy.
Well, she's a nurse, so I mean,
Tick.
It's okay. There we go. She was my carer. So yeah, so she came like a week later. So I just wanted to see if that first week I could just take that big step myself.
How was that first week?
Oh, hell. It was horrible.
Was it hard? I mean, I imagine it was.
I binged like most of the seasons of Friends.
I thought you were going to say, I nailed it. It was fine. What was hard? What was the hard
I
part?
was just very shocked by it all. Like I love traveling and I love London. But just I had no idea on what to expect. Yeah. I thought I'd get there straight away and it would be my dream. But I got there and I was like, I'm alone. Yeah. And just trying to figure out.
You hadn't thought that part through.
Exactly.
Because you can't until you're there.
Exactly. I had no idea what I'd feel. And like saying goodbye was one of the hardest things and still is. I hate saying goodbye. So like once I got there and just realizing I have no appointments. I have no one to see. I have nothing to do. Like, it's all up to me. That it was an overwhelming sense of freedom that terrified me. Not that I never had freedom. I have so much freedom here, but to know that I get to choose everything for myself. Like, every choice I make is mine.
Yeah.
No one else's. And that just was so overwhelming.
How
So,
long ago was this?
That was May last year.
And then what happened? Did COVID happen?
Well, yeah, then I went to university in September. I moved into a student hall. I met some of the best people of my life, and I finished my uni degree, well, almost. I had 2 weeks left of uni or something.
What were you studying?
I was doing social anthropology and development. And then, yeah, it just stopped. But the weirdest thing was...
You finished your degree, or COVID hit and you decided you had to come home?
Yeah, so the weirdest thing was we had 4 weeks worth of strikes at my uni for something or other. It was like...
Is that this year?
Yeah, that was in February. And that was like 70 universities in London were doing it. So it was a massive thing. So I had uni off like odd days. So it was 2 weeks worth of strikes, but over 4 weeks. That all happened. And then we had a week back at uni, and 2 of my classes were cancelled anyway because the lecturers weren't there. And then uni was shut down. So I have hardly attended university.
Wow.
I had a whole year.
You had a whole another year to go.
Yeah, I was on my first year of my degree. So then I was coming back anyway for medical legal reasons. And then I decided, well, I couldn't go back really. And then I decided that for now at least, I'm just going to defer uni for a year, stay here and just appreciate what I have here instead of going back to so much uncertainty where if something happened here and I couldn't get back in time or it was too much. So I decided to be here with my loved ones. And
Are you immunocompromised? Do you have to be extra careful?
I probably should be extra careful.
I feel like you're not. Though.
Yeah. Well, like, I don't let anything stop me.
Exactly.
Like, if I want to go out to, like, I don't know, the shops, I want to do that. Like, global pandemic
so
or
you
not.
haven't been locked down?
No. When I first got
Sydney-based?
here, I legally had to because I was quarantined. Thankfully, I just missed the hotel. I was the week before the hotel quarantine got in. Yeah. So I stayed inside for those 2 weeks, like, in my room. And then I wanted to see my friends. I hadn't seen them in almost a year or something. So I just slowly went out, like coffees and shops and all that was still closed. So now I'm just go out to like an empty cinema or like things where like I'm not in huge crowds anyway.
Like everyone, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
When you were in the UK, what was the biggest difference that you noticed?
See, the weirdest thing is I still got recognised over there.
Did you?
I got recognised, the weirdest one was in a gym changing room by an American woman. And I was so confused. And her auntie or nan was Australian and raised her, like when she was young, told her about me or something. But this woman was mid-late 20s or something. I was very surprised. And it was the weirdest thing. And that was only a few months into me being there. And I've had people from Australia who've moved to the UK or were visiting the UK be like, oh, that's Sophie Delezio, and come up to me, which is very lovely of them.
Is it lovely?
Yeah.
Or can it be a bit intrusive when you're just trying to get on with your life?
I don't know any different.
Yeah, I guess you don't.
Which is the weirdest thing.
Because I watch everyone project, preparing to meet you today. I watched a bunch of interviews and I watch all of these older people, around my age and older, projecting onto you, oh, I remember when this happened. And it's like everyone has to work through their own emotions about it. Like I was watching 60 Minutes this morning and I had my little cry, but that's nothing to do with you and nothing to do with your life now. And you were just a bit like,
yeah, on you. Yeah, pretty much. Because I think,
harden up, off you go. Didn't happen to you.
Well, like exactly what my mum said before, it's the fact that my story has helped people and has, I know this is weird, but I don't like the word inspired because I get
some people don't like the word inspired. Some people with disabilities hate that word.
Yeah, and like I'm okay for
You're
people.
allowed to like it. Though,
yeah. Like I'm okay if people use it on me, but I don't like using the word. But if I've helped people or changed their lives in some way, that's all I care about.
Yeah,
I don't
people
care
are very invested in you.
Yeah, exactly. And if they can find any bit of hope or courage from it, I'm happy to give it. I'm not going to shy away from my story or the spotlight because I want to like hide from it because it's my life. I can't do anything about it. I'm just going to create as much change as I can while I'm here.
When you were a teenager, did you rebel against your parents? Because you seem to
Oh.
love them and they love you, obviously.
I was a hard teenager to deal with.
What were you like as a teenager?
Bossy, controlling, a chatterbox, my way or the highway.
Did you push them away though? Were you like a bit?
Well, I did suffer from a lot of mental health illnesses when I was in my early teenage years, so I naturally did because of that, which is both to do with my disability and just life and,
And being a teenage girl.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Everyone suffers from something or
Yeah.
another at some point in their life. I think that period I definitely did, but like every teenager goes through a phase of saying no to their parents and wanting just their own space.
Yeah.
So I think mine was just pretty natural. At least from my perspective, it was like I hear stories. Mum's friend who has a kid who's 14, she's complaining about her daughter doing this, and I was like, I did that. Like,
Yeah.
Mitchell did that. We all did that. Like,
Yeah, it's
what
true.
kid didn't?
I suppose it's just the difference in how protective you are and how, because injuries and disability can be infantilizing in a way, can't it?
Definitely.
In the sense that you need care and you need.
You're reliant on
Yeah,
others.
you're reliant on others. Thanks for
and I
giving
think
me the
it's
word.
that we were so proud of Soph when she went to the UK because it was like, I've done my job. She's gotten there on her own.
Did you cry so much?
It's funny, at different times I would, certainly not at the airport, not to show Sophie, no.
Dad do.
That's the
I hear he's the crier in the
He will
family.
cry anywhere.
Apparently you've got this. Sophie's getting the pep talk right up to the get-go.
I'm crying like the entire 26-hour flight there, like first
You've got
week.
this is what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Because that natural pushing away, which a mother has to really respect in the sense that it's a very normal part. But you also still had this caretaking role and
Yeah, it's the juggle of Sophie as her care has changed as she's aged in terms of giving her some more opportunity to negotiate her own pathway forward.
yeah.
And, we know that she needs to keep mobile. And, when swimming wasn't working out, we had to look at other options. That's why rowing came.
Because otherwise
You know,
scarring
yeah.
gets tight.
Yeah.
It
Skin gets tight.
compounds, definitely. And so it's really good about managing her physical strength now
Yeah.
through various means. I think she's overall done a really good job. There were times where I really feel sorry for Jenny, her physio on Saturday mornings.
I was a
They were
horrible
not
patient
great.
for physio. I
was
hated
not
it.
so
Did
pretty.
you?
Because it was stretching that I was like,
Would
yeah, I
hurt,
don't need
right?
it. No, well, yeah.
She
I
had
think
to get
after a
up bit
while.
early on a Saturday
Yeah.
morning.
Oh,
I was not a morning person as a teenager. It was more the fact that I didn't see the need for it. It might have hurt, it might not have, but I was still like, why?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think as you get older, every teenager comes to an appreciation of their parents and the role they play. Like at 14.
At what age does that happen?
Yeah.
Tell me. My daughter's 14.
My brother's 21 and I still don't think he realizes it.
Goodness.
It took me time, during those middle teenage years,
Yeah.
14 to 16. I didn't realize that, how much everyone has done for me, whether it's my physio or my mum or whoever, especially once I moved to England, that appreciation just doubled in size because I realized how much my parents have built stuff for me, whether you're disabled or not, you value how much of your life is to do with your parents. And they shape you, whether it's good or bad, they're going to shape you no matter what. And so that appreciation definitely came to me even more so when
You moved to the
Yeah.
UK. Carolyn, the first accident, you could be quite fatalistic, I imagine, and say this was terrible luck. It was a driver, had a seizure. The second time, 2 years later, how the hell do you reconcile that?
I don't think you can, other than you think there's a divine purpose. What is it?
Yeah.
And then
like,
you go,
really,
actually,
come on, Mary.
But
Are you really trying to test my faith here?
And then it's like, that's never going to be answered. Park it. And for us was more of a continuance because our biggest gap from a hospital visit was only a couple of weeks at that point anyway. So it was just like, we just clicked into an automation, Ron and I, of we've done this before, we know what to do, pull in these teams, do it this way. The same thing, friends came around, they were sorting the mail, they were doing this, and everyone just clicked into the same jobs
like,
they'd done before.
right.
It was kind of weird. It was surreal, certainly surreal.
One of the most beautiful things about the second accident was that we had even more people around, like people who were my rehabilitation swim teachers who worked at my second preschool. They lived around the corner for where Mitchell went to school when he went to primary school. So they'd pick him up after school. So people that we never knew before the accident, the first accident, were then around for the second accident to help with that. We had all the people before, plus all these other new wonderful people in our lives who had the knowledge of disabilities and all of that to assist us with that as well.
Were the injuries very different and the type of thing that you were dealing with very different?
Yeah, it was actually, because she was not hit by the car in the first accident. So there was no blunt force trauma, and with the second, it's a very different thing where there's broken bones and a head injury. And
most of my first accident injuries were external, whereas second accident, it was all internal. So it was complete opposite.
What did you tell Sophie about it?
Well, that you got hit on a crossing with Tara, but Tara was okay.
My assistant's dog at the
Your
time.
assistant's dog. I was seeing your beautiful assistant's dog.
She
was
a
adorable.
very special dog.
Did you have more assistance dogs after her? Because she died early, didn't she?
Yeah,
That seems unfair. I mean, honestly.
It was tragic. And she was like the top of the class assistance dog. Like you could not get a better one. And then we decided to take a break for a little while because we were so upset about that. And we didn't want to feel like you could just replace an animal like that. We now have our second assistance dog who's not at all the top of the class. How do I put it nicely? She barely graduated.
You assist her.
100%. Like, the best thing about Willow, that's her name, is she thinks she's trying to help.
Yeah.
So, like,
sweetie,
she
she's
sees a
trying
shoe,
hard.
put it in the corner of the room, and she'll carry it around the house for the entire day. And then you go to take it off her, and she'll be like, nope, and turn her head and walk away from you the last minute.
You're her assistant's human, really.
100%. Like, she accidentally eats my dressings, my bandages and things like
Willow.
that. Like,
She's trying to tidy up.
yeah. From tidy up,
method in the madness.
tidy up the bin.
I'm disposing of the evidence. That's right. I'm just going to eat it.
Yeah.
God, I love
But
her.
she is the best house pet.
Yeah.
She is the worst assistance dog. I'll 100% say that. There's no doubt about that.
Maybe
But
she needs an assistant
but
dog.
yeah, literally, she's the emotional support.
Yeah.
Like,
which is another component.
She'll be at
of
my
it.
door crying, and I'll just open the door. She'll come and sit on my bed and just lie there for like 2 minutes and then walk away again.
She's like, give me a cuddle.
Yes, so much better. Thank
Scratch
you.
my tummy. Thank you. I would like a snack.
Literally. When does she not want food? But yeah, so I call her an emotional support dog.
Yeah. Rather than an assistant.
Yeah, a self-retired assistance dog. From the day we got her. She never really passed in my
Well,
eyes.
they let her graduate, though. We did go through
Did
the
they?
ceremony.
Yes, she got a little like graduation certificate and everything.
That's cute.
Yeah.
How do you have any faith in cars and in the world and in walking down the street? Like having that shaken for you. I imagine less for you because you don't have actual memories of it.
Look, you can't live your life in fear. I mean,
You can.
well, yes.
Many people do.
Many
who
people
haven't
do.
had terrible things.
No, that's right. But I'm
At what
suggesting
cost?
that bad stuff happens to good people. You can either just pick up and keep on, or you can let something bad consume you. And living a life of fear or regret is not a happy life. It's not a life that necessarily is going to fulfill you as a human. And I think you pick yourself up and you keep going. And, that's incredibly tough some days. And Soph will be the first to admit that. Not every day is a fabulous day.
100%.
What does a bad day look like, So?
I think for me, at this point in my life, it's because I always have pressure wounds on my legs because of my prosthetics. So it's when they're beyond painful that I can't put on my prosthetic. And for me, my prosthetics are my main type of freedom. I'm happy to use my wheelchair outside the house, but I need my prosthetics to drive my car. I need my prosthetics to, if I'm at a place with stairs, to walk up the stairs. So I think the hardest days are the ones where I just have to do nothing. And I'm the type of person, I like having plans. I like being busy and always having things to do, because when I don't, then I'm not bored out of my mind. But then those days come about and I hate them nonetheless, no matter how much things I have to do on my computer or whatever.
Do they happen often those days?
Yeah, I go through periods at least once a month with them. I'm prone to infections and a million other things, and like sometimes my wounds just get deeper than they should, or I get more irritations than I do on a normal day.
You use your prosthetics more than you're meant to.
100%. When I was in high school, my guy who makes my legs, my prosthetist, made sure that he told me I should only wear my legs 3 hours a day. That did not go up to plan.
How much do you wear them?
12 to 14 hours a day.
Yeah, right. And then you suffer the consequences, which is
but for
wounds.
me, I don't care. Like, I've had points in my life where my doctor's like, Sophie, you need to stop wearing your legs, otherwise next week you'll be in here for emergency surgery to get like the wounds covered up. I did not stop wearing my legs, and it naturally healed itself. I'm very proud of that moment.
Yeah, it's sigh over there from Carolyn. Tell me about body image in your teenage years. I mean, it's tricky for any girl.
I definitely struggled with weight management and all that, and the perception of like seeing these girls and, you know, just freely walking onto the beach and going for a swim, where I had to take my prosthetics off and take my dressings off and then put them back on and do all of that. And I think for me it was especially hard because when I had my second accident, I had to eat a lot of high-fat foods to gain weight because I was so malnourished and my body needed more food and energy and all that. But I think everyone's going to suffer with it at some point. Like, that's the horrible part of society, is that there is such a stigma about the perfect body image. But it's just trying to find a peace with yourself, whether that's not a certain size or weight, but knowing you're doing what's best for your health, whether that's exercising once a week or at least eating a somewhat of a balanced diet. I don't think it matters how you look, but how you manage your life around healthiness and all of that. But as a teenager, I definitely covered up a lot more. I'm very modest. I'm not going to wear like a croc top where you can see my half my stomach and all of that, and like shorts when my butt's hanging out and whatnot. I just was naturally, because when I went to high school, I didn't wear my prosthetics for my first few years. So I just naturally covered up anyway, because when I was going through that dark phase of my life, didn't want people to see certain things about me. And I think just as I've grown older, as I've gone into sports and gained muscle and all that and built that confidence in the athletic area, I think it's just gone away from me. And I've just now, everyone still suffers with it no matter how old you are. I still suffer with it individually myself. But it's just coming to acceptance that I am doing what's best for my body. I can't overwork myself. I can only do so much, whether that's, someone with work or you can't go to the gym 10 times a day because you've got, a full-time job and whatnot. So I'm just, doing what I can to help with my health and fitness. And I think that's all you can really do in your life.
Sport seems to have really flip the switch from what your body is limited in doing as to what your body can do, because you're an incredibly successful rower.
Yeah, thank you.
What was it like being out on the water?
Yeah, well, it all started for me with swimming. My rehab when I first came out of hospital was swimming. To build up all my muscle was straight. They put me in the pool straight away. I was always a water baby. I loved swimming, all of that before my accident. And so they just put me back in. So sport has always been my rehab, no matter what. So when I was competitively swimming so much and then I got a rotator cuff injury reoccurring, then they were like, okay, you've been swimming too much. Let's try a different sport. Then I went into rowing.
Noticing a pattern here.
Yeah.
Pushing to the limit.
Oh, yeah.
You moved high schools a few times.
Yes, I did. My first time was more for personal reasons and the fact that I never felt like I fully belonged. It was a wonderful school, and every school I've been to has taught me something completely different and has given me support in such a different way. There was a lot of changes going on at the school at the time, and I just felt like I needed to change myself and move somewhere else. And I had a best friend from primary school who went to another school and we're still close friends. And I thought I wanted to give out co-ed learning a go. So I moved there and it was wonderful, but it didn't feel right, perfect for me. So then a very good family friend of mine, the one who came to England with me the week after.
Yeah.
She went to my final high school, graduated 5 years after before I did. And she said from day one, it was a senior school, so you could only go for year 11 and 12. She said since day one of me leaving my first school, you would love this school. And I went, and it was the complete opposite. Each 3 schools were completely polar opposites. I went from an all-girls school and then to a co-ed, then to a school where you called their teachers by their first name.
And that was the one that suited you the best at that time.
It was you got so much freedom, and you were allowed to grow individually. I feel a lot of schools try and compress a child's individuality and creativity, except in the creative subjects. And I felt this school, because you could wear whatever you wanted to school. We had a common room where it wasn't just for 1 year, it was for both years. And you could go out at lunch if you wanted to go up to Chatswood or whatever.
So you were treated much more like an adult.
Exactly.
It was a campus style.
Yeah, it was an adult learning environment.
That suited you.
Yeah, and I know people I went to school with, it didn't suit them. They moved schools, or they ended up going to TAFE or apprenticeships or whatnot. But for some of my best friends still to this day, it was the best thing that could have done for them. It just so happened that we met the people that changed our lives for the better. Like my best friends I met on the first day, and we're still best friends. It just worked for me. It was what I needed in a school. I needed that independence and that opportunity to let me grow. And then I moved to England to get more independence.
There was another little girl that was injured that day as well, Molly
Yes,
Wood.
Molly.
She sort of disappeared from the public eye quite quickly. I suppose everybody wanted you guys to sort of stay friends and all of that. Was her experience very different to yours, or you've lost contact?
Her family wanted to shy away from the media a bit more, which completely their decision, no judgment there for that. But I think they took a different approach to the trauma than my
most
parents
people
did.
aren't still friends with someone they were friends with it too.
Exactly.
They ended up moving to the UK. So they
When we were quite young, like they moved around 10 years ago now. I still remember saying goodbye to her. But
so we kept in touch up until that point. And then-
Molly's mum, Caroline, was British, and then she wanted to go back for her family. So it was the type of thing that we just naturally split apart. But we're Facebook friends. We haven't been in contact as such, but we...
Facebook friends will do it.
Yeah, exactly. It does it for now. Like COVID's...
Yeah.
Like otherwise may have seen each other, but
It's
let's
true.
just blame it on COVID.
Post-traumatic stress syndrome is something that I thought everybody got after they experienced a tragedy or a catastrophic traumatic event. Since talking to a lot of people, but also in Lee Sales' book, One Ordinary Day, she talks about how what you don't hear about is post-traumatic growth syndrome as well, that a lot of people have the light in their life turned up, not down, by a tragedy or a catastrophic trauma. I get the sense that's the case with you. I don't want to Pollyanna it, but you seem to, I don't know, is that true? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Well, I think it is in the sense that I felt our lives became more enriched by the experience. And because of the people, the inspiring people we met, stories of people who've risen to challenges beyond anything we've experienced. They're just great stories of inspiration. Well, that word inspiration, but they do, when you're in the situation, they do inspire you to keep going. The people who've reached out to us that had no connection to us, who felt that they could offer us something to help us through, and the support that we've had as a family from the community, as I said, was bigger than we could manage. We reached out and we were supported by the community, which allowed us in turn to support a broader community.
Through the charity,
Through the
which has
charity.
raised millions of dollars.
But also through the gifts that we were given from the community. If we couldn't use the gifts, we would find people who could use the gifts. If that was food or if it was clothing or whatever was sent, if we didn't have a need ourselves, we knew where it could be best used. And so we were in a fortunate position, certainly living in a children's hospital for the length of time that we had to meet people who needed more and organisations and other charities that touch, I think of the Steve Wall Foundation, that touch on the rarest type of syndromes, so we can sort of steer
It's like a club
people.
that no one wants to join, but once you're in it, you meet some pretty amazing people.
You do meet amazing people.
Sophie, is it weird when you've got the media speculating on whether you've got a boyfriend or not got a boyfriend?
I found when I first moved to England, it was a bit shocking because I think that's
It's like
when
you were in the gossip column suddenly.
I was very confused about that, especially because people I was speculated to be dating were gay. And but there were photos of me with their boyfriend and my other friend, and like it was immediately like they have to be together, because my entire life some of my closest friends are guys. I've always had...
So they're scanning your Instagram and trying to make up stories around the pictures.
Exactly.
I mean, that must be... It's funny in a way, Carolyn, when you think about all those dark nights of the soul that you must have had in hospitals, and just think one day the gossip columns are going to be like, Sophie Delezio's new boyfriend. Like, you would have loved to have that as a problem, right?
Exactly.
Back then when you were thinking about koalas bearing too much.
Exactly.
Do you kind of just laugh?
Yeah. My friends and the ones who've been speculated that I'm dating, we love it. Like, whenever there's a gossip article that comes out, we always crowd around a phone and we're like ready to like, oh, they think this. That's hysterical.
It's like Sophie gossip bingo.
Exactly.
Bingo.
Exactly.
Who's going to get called?
Oh, it's so funny. Like the guy I went to formal with actually had a girlfriend, and like we were just photographed together as like a he's my formal date sort of thing. Yeah. Like he's my best friend.
I think it's part of everyone just feeling so invested in your happiness.
Yeah.
As if, and that's not necessarily what happiness is, having a boyfriend or a girlfriend or whatever. That's not necessarily what happiness is, but it's everyone just wants, you know,
I completely
happily ever after. But it seems to me that you've got that in just who you are and the relationship you have with your family.
Exactly. And I think my friends have such a big part to do with that as well. Like, I don't need a boyfriend to be happy.
You sure don't.
Yeah.
What extraordinary women you both are.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Your relationship is just beautiful to behold as well. The care that you have with each other is just so beautiful. Hope you feel the love that everybody has when I told them that you were both coming in.
Oh, I was so excited to meet Sophie and her mum. I feel like their faces are sort of etched into my mind and my heart in the way that they are for so many people. And it's really interesting when you meet people that you feel you have watched through the media for so many years and who you've sort of rooted for behind the scenes. They were just so... Caroline had like a real sort of solid... I don't know, she just seemed very grounded. And Sophie was just more grounded and more delightful than your average 19-year-old. She was just joyful. She has a real lightness and cheekiness in her spirit. And I was just so buzzed. And when I told people that I'd interviewed them, they were like, oh my God. Like everyone's got a real connection, which must be kind of weird if you're Sophie and her mum. But yeah, they are such beautiful people. To find out more or donate to Sophie's charity, Day of Difference, which has helped so many people, please head to the link in our show notes. This episode was produced by Leah Porges. The executive producer of No Filter is Eliza Ratliff. I'm Mia Friedman, and I'll see you on mamamia.com.au.